Assassin's Creed is a series built on personal stories about a variety of characters, and one of the best ways to develop a character or contrast them is through an antagonist. The series has had a lot of these, good and bad, so today I'm going to count down my personal 5 favourite villains in the series. They don't necessarily have to be main villains, just villains, with the only rule being I can only pick one from each game to avoid any repetition. Anyway, let's get into this. Alright, so number 5 might catch some of you guys off guard, but I picked the SCARAB, TAHARQA from Assassin's Creed Origins. It's no secret the main villain of the game, Flavius, was quite underwhelming, and most of the side villains, including TAHARQA, were more memorable. And that says a lot if we're being honest. What I do love about TAHARQA though is that he's very two-sided, and Tristan D'Lala pulls it off brilliantly. Before his identity is revealed, he's very much like this likeable family man who's presented very much like a hero, but as we know, the SCARAB was something of a sadist who was known to torture anyone who got in his way, including TAHARQA's father-in-law, Gooper, I think his name was. Just generally, I really like the idea of this just facade of this man who was a hero, and seemed like he kind of revelled in like the ego and someone who was built up as this legend who was rebuilding this city as just a facade of another member in the order who's out for their own selfish gain. Also, it's not really related, but the side quest with his son in the Hidden Ones DLC is brilliant. So at the number 4 spot on this list, I put MUALIM from AC1, or his real name, Rashid ad-Din Sinan. MUALIM is another character who turns out to be nowhere near as noble as he once seemed. Although MUALIM often preached the importance of the Brotherhood's ideals to Altair and punished him for not taking these ideals seriously, he gave these up in an instant to go after the apple. In fact, MUALIM's general ideology lines up far more with the Templars, as he's very power hungry and controlling, but I wouldn't really say he fits either order, which makes sense as he basically plays both sides in the game and ends up being an enemy to both Altair and Robert de Saab. And the twist that he is the main antagonist instead of Robert de Saab was actually really well done. It didn't feel cheap as everything just lined up with his character as well as his duplicity and just his complete selfishness that transcended the worst sides of either Templar or Assassins, and that made MUALIM a really interesting villain. Cesare Borgia is probably the most hateable villain on this list, and in terms of morality, he's probably the worst one going. Something interesting about Cesare is that in one of the Brotherhood trailers, he's presented as sort of like a parallel to Ezio. He says something like they're both souls who kill in the name of destiny, they're both brave enough to look death in the eye, and both have the charisma to raise armies. It's been like a decade since the trailer came out, so I might be a bit off there, but I think it's such a cool idea where you have these two enemies who are a parallel to one another. It's not something you really see much in Assassin's Creed. Of course, we know Cesare wasn't as brave as he made himself out to be when it came to looking death in the eye, but he's one of those Templars who is completely in it for themselves. Despite being the Grand Master of the Italian Templars, his want for personal gain and just ego transcends the needs of the Order. It's really interesting as well when you read about his brother and why exactly Cesare is the way that he is, but in all, he's not just a great villain, but a great villain specifically for Ezio, who I think would have still worked, but just not as well with a character like, say, Connor or Bayek. Alright, I love Rodrigo Borgia as a villain, because he starts off well, but something great about Rodrigo is he actually develops, which is so rare to see an AC villain do, but it works really well because it rubs off onto Ezio as well. For years we know that Rodrigo thinks of himself as the prophet, and his ambition and greed guide him to the vault, and when he realises that Ezio is the prophet, that clearly changes him. That's why the moment when Ezio spares him in AC2 is one of my favourites in the series. When Rodrigo just gives up and says get it over with then, and Ezio refuses to kill him, it's incredible because it encapsulates the journey of not just Ezio but also Rodrigo. And the best antagonists are those ones that cause that much character development in the protagonist. When you then see him in Brotherhood as a far more humble man, it's so interesting because it's not like he's just pure good at that point. He's still bad, but he's far more reserved now, and you see the impact that Ezio had on him in Assassin's Creed 2, and the way that not only the villain massively affects the arc of the protagonist, but the protagonist massively affects the arc of the villain is just so good. It's perfect, and it is one of the reasons why I love the Ezio trilogy so much, because every character affects the others, and just everything connects. I can already see the comments calling me an Ezio fanboy. I don't care, it's perfectly done, and the dynamic between these two characters is perfect. Even though they spend so little time together, they have such an effect on each other. It's brilliant. Alright, so I know calling Haytham a villain is going to be controversial, but since Connor is the primary protagonist of Assassin's Creed 3 and Haytham is an antagonist from his perspective, I think it's fit to feature him on the list. Haytham is one of my favourite characters in the entire series, and him being a villain in Assassin's Creed 3 doesn't take away from that. I think it actually adds a lot to have this character who is a villain seem so reasonable and logical, and someone who could just destroy you with facts and logic. Yeah, I did just reference a 2-year-old man, that was fucking awful. Anyway, Haytham is a character who feels very much like the black sheep. His father and his son are assassins, he has no military allegiance, and even the people within his order, such as Thomas Hickey, feel very disconnected from Haytham, as his dedication is far more important than anything else. Even Charles Lee was far more mad and violent, whereas Haytham just always keeps his composure. And while every other character on this list has been influenced by greed or self-gain in some way, Haytham is the complete opposite, because he's not inherently violent or inherently insane or egotistical. He just wants things to work out. He is in this for the betterment of society, which makes Assassin's Creed 3's look-in on the Templars just so compelling. The conflict between the Assassins and the Templars is one of my favourite things in the series, and Haytham does such a good job of representing their core ideology and shows that they don't necessarily have to be evil, even if you do disagree with them. He's also just very likeable and has this sort of quiet charisma that I loved so much. Also, one of the reasons that I love Haytham that's completely different to the reason that I love Rodrigo is he doesn't change. Because he's so dedicated that when he dies, there's no like speech about how he's changed or he's learnt. He says to Connor something like, "Do you want me to caress your cheek and tell me I was wrong?" because he does believe in this ideology. And I love that because it was so fitting for his character to have him believe this through to the end. And for those reasons, HAYTHAM KENWAY is not only my favourite villain in the Assassin's Creed series, but just one of my favourite characters in the series too. So guys, this is just a little bit I'm adding in the next day after I've edited this, but I woke up this morning and we've got 500 subscribers, which is absolutely insane. Going into this year, my goal was 100 subs, and obviously thank you to James, because he pushed me over there, and I probably wouldn't even be here right now if it wasn't for that boost that gave me. But yeah, 500 was then my goal, and obviously we've done that now, and it's insane because I love doing this. It's the best thing in my life basically, and thank you so much. And it's like the comments and the messages and all that, some of them are really, most of them are just saying you sound like a 2016 Lasers, which is I gotta be honest, don't really do myself any favours when I'm like overly pessimistic about Assassin's Creed, overuse of the rogue theme, and absolutely abuse lemon milk, to be fair, you know. But nah, I just wanted to say thank you guys for 500 subscribers. That's absolutely crazy that we've gotten that. I know that's not like a huge number, but it is to me. You know, like when I started doing like awful Walking Dead videos like 5 years ago, I never thought I'd be here. So thank you for that, and let's see. I know it's crazy because it's like double the count I'm on now, but let's see if we can maybe get 1,000 by the end of the year. That'll be really cool. Anyway guys, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, maybe leave a like. If not, maybe let me know why. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.